The other topic I wanted to talk about is Joe Rogan finding religion. And I have a clip of him, which I thought was pretty cool because he was like pretty fascinated. I'm gonna start with the clip here, because I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool. He gets a gift from that guy Huff,
Wes Huff.
Yeah, Wes Huff. Share screen, window, Brave tab. There we go. Where is this one? Yeah, former atheist. That one. Here it is. Here's a clip of him like getting this gift. He seems like genuinely kind of blown away. Here.
Before this was discovered by C.H. Roberts in the 1940s, the convention was, because of a guy named C.H. Bauer, that the Gospel of John was 2nd century. And so he had this, he was a student of Hegel. Have you ever heard of Hegelian dialectic? So you have like a thesis, synthesis, and antithesis.
Yes.
So Hegel had this philosophical theory, and his student Bauer takes that and he incorporates this into history. And he says, you know, the earliest gospel, Mark, has this very Jewish Jesus, and then the later gospels have a very like the last of what are called the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Luke has a very kind of more divine Jesus. And so he says, based on this, John is the last written one. And it combines these two where you get a very human and a very divine Jesus together. And so based on this, he says that John has to be 2nd century. Well, we discover this guy. C.H. Roberts is, you know, literally going through these piles of manuscripts in these drawers that are being like stashed away. And he finds this guy and he sees that it's written on both sides, which is almost exclusively a Christian convention. And so he says, okay, this is written on both sides. It's probably a Christian manuscript. So he sends it off to the leading.
I'll skip ahead a little bit here.
2nd century.
He's basically saying like, hey, this is the real deal.
All of the literature up until that point made you. If the
So he gives him this gift,
gets totally rewritten. I also made you.
He gave him some super ancient thing.
So this is, I used 2 different variations of papyri. Whoa. So you have there where P52 would have been on the page, and based on it's called codicological conventions, the spacings of the words and the way that the size of the margin that we can see, where it would have been on the page and how big the page would have actually been. So this is like a reconstruction, and then I filled in the rest of the text in the same sort of stylistic hand of the scribes at that time, what that page would have looked like. So this would have come from what would have been essentially like a pocket copy of the Gospel of John.
Like he's genuinely blown away.
I love it. And it's funny, if you actually look at older Joe Rogan interviews and stuff, man, he would argue so hard against Christianity and get even emotional about it. So it's amazing to see how his heart has softened so much since then.
Well, check this one. You're really going to like this one.
Well, space is the ultimate who the fuck knows, because we can only see so far. We see so far, but even so far is only so far.
Well, and then they're saying like it's always expanding, which that can't be true, because like what is it expanding into? If space is space,
it's actually finite.
Who made all that?
Right.
Like, is there a God? Did God make this?
Or is God the universe?
Yeah, but then who made God? And then that bothers me.
Right, but
like, who made that thing?
Is that a thing that we think that like because we were born and we die, that we have these biological limitations that we attach to the universe itself?
That's a very that's fair. That we see things as being built and destroyed.
That there's always been something. Well, wouldn't it be crazy if there wasn't something at one point in time? That seems even crazier. Then there always has been something. Because if it's just something, if it's just the nature,
it started that. What
the difference between science and religion is
that
science only asks you for one miracle. I want you to believe in one miracle, the Big Bang.
Yeah. That's a good one.
It's a great line.
Yeah.
It's because it really is true.
Yes.
And it's funny because people would be incredulous about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but yet they're convinced that the entire universe was smaller than the head of a pin, and for no reason that anybody's adequately explained to me. It makes sense.
Yeah. No.
Instantaneously became everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't buy that.
I'm sticking with Jesus on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I love it. Oh my goodness. That's the thing is it's just this is a nice white pill to see because sometimes it's just like you see just the terrible how terrible humanity can be and how evil a lot of people can be and just how closed off they are to God. But just because somebody is closed off or defensive or not soften their hearts to God doesn't mean they never will. And seeing this progression with Joe Rogan is extremely promising. Him being in church now,
yeah, he's attending
I think
church
it's
regularly.
amazing. Yeah.
What about this? Then I'll get your guys' full takes. But this too, Gen Zs who are actually happy are saying yes to religion and family and no to social media. And the amount of church attendance is actually up. The gender gap between men and women who attend church has now been erased. More men are attending church.
And we needed that so bad because that's
Yeah.
been one of the huge problems is that the church has gotten too feminine. And it's because it's just been mostly women who have been attending church for a while now. So to see male attendance go up more, this is an awesome thing. I want to see more male leadership and I want to see women take a step back and obviously still attend, but take a step back from like the running things because hey, let the men handle this as God intended in the Bible, and that's amazing.
And I think men need more men around them as they grapple with issues like in their faith or in their life. I think it's good for men to have male role models that they can talk to, especially when it's a question of religion, which does take faith. Like you have to believe. Stop biting me. Sorry. That's my producer, Moon. She's aggressive.
Black cats, man.
Now I
She
feel like I
got
should let
up
Doc
here.
in.
Mine
She
is
wants
too.
to be pet, but then she bites me. It's a whole thing. But anyways, no, I think men going to church changes the direction of culture.
Oh, yeah.
And I've heard a lot of women talk about, they get married and maybe they're religious. Both couples are religious when they start, but they continue to go to church and their husbands fall away, and it can have long-lasting effects on the family.
Yeah.
And I think that this desire for culture and community, one of the best ways to start changing that in your own life is to get involved in your church community, which I think we have coached a generation of people, and maybe Melonie, you can talk about this more than I can, but there's a generation, there's like a time in your life where you're like, if you maybe raised with your family, you're going to church, and then you leave and you're on your own and attendance drops off. And then it sort of never recovers, except for a little while, the trend was like, except when people start either getting married or having children, then they start going back. Not all of them. But it makes a big difference to have it in your life continuously throughout your life. And I think, having people like Joe Rogan embrace religion is positive because it makes it okay for other people who feel like there's some stigma about going back to church.
Right. And I love to see that with men, and especially with fathers, it's very important. My dad, that's one thing I'm so very grateful for. My dad always made sure we were in church every week. And he wasn't one to stay at home while we all went. Dad was always, he was ready to go. He made sure we were all ready to go. And every Sunday we were in church. And so the foundation of the faith stuck with me. So when I grew up and when I went through a rebellious phase and all of that, guess what? I went right back to my roots later because that was instilled in me my whole life before and growing up. And I'm so grateful for my parents, both of them, for raising me in the faith. But I just think how awesome it is that I had and still have a dad who was so strong in faith and who raised my brothers and I in church.
Mm-hmm. And I think what you said is the biggest thing, like something to go back to. Like, yeah, you might not be a perfect Christian at all times, or you might, be more or less involved at various points in your life, but ultimately you're passing down cultural and traditional norms that people can then use to shape a healthy life or a life that's meaningful. So many people talk about being lonely or feeling like they don't have a purpose, and like, then they don't go to church, and you're like, but that's one place to start, like I can't say every church is the best one, but probably pursuing it and doing what humans have done for hundreds of years and pursuing your faith is a great way to start getting direction in your life if you feel like you're adrift.
Yep.
I think like I can confidently say that, like, just even like I did a standalone video on this that's a little more in depth later, and I kind of share this in that video. But like, I think that Joe Rogan being open about this, like, he doesn't have to become a podcast televangelist.
Right.
He just has to be like, I mean, this is a guy that was a staunch atheist. And I said this earlier in my video. I'll just repeat it, just a small section, but like, kind of seeing this and reading this has like rekindled for me, like, okay, I'm just going to take the plunge and like go back to church, because like, it's not like, I think that the church is not without its problems.
Right.
But I also think that, millions of young people going back to church is a huge net positive. And like a lot of the quote unquote problems with the church aren't really at your local level. Like you going to regular church on Sunday, they're not like, now you shouldn't go to these woke churches. If your church celebrates pride, don't go to that church. But like a traditional, like, regular old church, there's almost no negative to attending that church. And so I just see this as like an absolute win if more Gen Z is going to church. There was somebody at a bookstore who runs a Christian bookstore who was interviewed, and he's like, there's tons of kids coming in now and buying Bibles. They'd never seen in their life.
Oh, there's like record numbers of Bibles sold in recent history. I want to say like last year, more Bibles they sold more Bibles in a very long time. So I definitely love to see that. I think one thing that we've seen is as culture has gotten more and more secular, and as they've tried to do this whole, let's just do a live and let live type system with no foundation at all. And then all of a sudden you see this rise of the alphabet cult and this, that, and the other. Oh, they're just living their lives. They're doing, well, we saw what that did to culture. We saw just how, right now on X, there's this circulating about a 17-year-old boy.
I saw that. Yeah.
Who committed suicide. And he was in the transgender cult. He got brainwashed into the whole transgender ideology as a youth. So it's like, we've seen what this whole, live and let live, let people do things that they want to do as long as they're not hurting anybody. Well, it does hurt people and it hurts culture. And so I think we're seeing a lot of people who actually are wanting a foundation. They're pushing back against it, and they're wanting to see morals come back. This whole hookup culture, promiscuity, feminism, all the transgender stuff, the gay stuff, all of that has been rotting our culture. And so now people are like, hey, let's actually find a moral foundation here in the church.
I think you're 100% right. And I think that now, 20 years later, a lot of these people who were embracing that, we now see the aftermath.
Yep.
Like, we now see, in a time in which these numbers should be going down, record increases in STDs in like modern society, and like all this kind of like fatherless homes and everything that happens downstream from that is a product of third wave feminism, a product of healthy at all sizes, Marxism. And like now those people that were pushing that in their 20s, now they're 30 and now they're 35, 40. And they're like, dang, like, okay, yeah, I did what I wanted. I lived by my own code for 15 years, but now I'm unhappy and all my friends have left and that's just me.
And you always see just a rise of going back to like biblical values, whether people want to admit it or not. That's why you see a lot of people, I see a lot of people on TikTok who are saying, oh, you know what? Dating culture is terrible right now. Men and women alike are both saying this. I'm just staying celibate because because this hookup culture and all that is wrong. And it's like, it's almost like the Bible tells us for a reason that this is not good. That premarital sex and hookup culture and promiscuity, that it's not good.
They think they're reinventing the wheel, but they are in fact just falling back to traditional ways of dating and living life. I think the desire for direction is part of our need to be like, we have systems for this already, because otherwise I think people fall into really like dark places. Like you guys have talked about transgenderism or like things online, falling into weird ways of thinking. I think people also can be led into just like bad habits by not having some sort of base moral place to go and be like, well, what does like a culture that I value that is proven to be strong said about this? And I think Jeremy's right. Like there are definitely issues with all kinds of churches, all kinds of religions, but in addition to them not being necessarily at your local level, if you want things to get better, you have to be involved in them. You know, like you could change things. You're just sitting it out and then saying like, oh, well, it's bad, but then you're still unhappy with your life. Like you can't really be the one throwing stones and also being like, yeah, but my life is awful and I'm anxious and I'm not
Pick a
going
lane.
anywhere and I don't feel like I have any friends and I don't feel like there are people who are there for me. Like, so what do you want to do here, team? You have to take an active role in the solution.
Yeah, I love that.
I think that's what I am curious about going forward is like all of these people who have said, I don't need this, as they like see people around them like Joe Rogan or even just their friends being like, no, it's normal. Like I go to church is something I carve out in my week to do, how much that will impact the way people choose to spend their time. Because I think that's the like, I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like there was a time when being like religious was basically not cool. And if it's normal, it doesn't have to be cool, but if it's just normal, how will that change the way people choose to live?